That's just how intolerant Robert Mugabe and those who were around him were to an independent media in Zimbabwe.
Who limit access to our venues to those who are genuine journalists, who are not working for ZANU, and we know it.
This is the Free Talk.
The world comes together to celebrate World Press Freedom Day. In some countries it is not celebrated, it's just commemorated, observed, because of authoritarian regimes that control the press. This is the story of Zimbabwe, where for many years the space in the media has been constricted to allow those in power, the political elites, to maintain political grip on power. The battle to have free press in Zimbabwe continues even up to this day. Economically, where the press is struggling to survive. Politically, where voices are muscled. And even financially, where journalists have faced serious attempts for corruption to remain silent. Now, this road cannot be discussed without mentioning Trevor Ncube, the chairperson of Alpha Media Holdings. Now, here on this, the Free Talk, we speak to Trevor Ncube, his journey to establishing a free press, his journey even in the face of political opposition, and also some voices from the industry itself that have sought to fight him in that space. We challenge him to speak to us on those issues. We are this evening in conversation with Trevor. Thank you very much, Trevor, for joining us here on the Free Talk.
Thank you, Blessed, for having me. Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege. Thank you very much.
Now, Trevor, as we talk to you, there's this iconic picture of you on the robots with your cell phone strapped on your belt then, and you were waving newspapers to motorists. Now, let us start from there, Trevor, where you had to go out and become a vendor yourself in the fight to ensure that people access content that is unmolested. Now, let us start from there. How did you find yourself on the street corner defending what you believed at that point?
Again, thank you for having me, Blessed. I decided to be a vendor when we found our vendors being harassed by the police for what we thought were reasons other than just wanting to get the city clean and orderly. Because we got the sense that the vendors that were being harassed were vendors that were selling newspapers from our group and other independent publications, and that the state-controlled newspapers, the Herald and others, were having free reign. And I decided to make a point. At that time, I didn't think it would be something that people would look at as something huge. I decided to go out and sell the newspapers in the morning until midday. An important lesson that I learned that day, and huge respect that I had, was for the men and women that sell our papers. It's not easy standing by the traffic lights, either in a hot day or in a raining day, selling newspapers. But I did it. We pushed the point by my being on the streets to the extent that we managed to secure a meeting with the Ministry of Information to resolve these issues, because people thought that I was grandstanding, but in reality trying to focus on what we thought was an attack on press freedom, the public's right to buy the newspaper of their choice where they wanted to buy it.
You speak about the state media having free reign. Now, as a newsman, do you still feel that exists where private players and independent voices are stifled while the state media gets free reign?
Well, I think it's free reign within quotation marks. We know for a fact that people in the Ministry of Information interfere with what gets published in government-controlled newspapers, in the Herald, in the Sunday Mail, in government-controlled Zimbabwe Broadcasting and television. Sadly, it must be said that those journalists, to a very large extent, don't enjoy the freedom that journalists should enjoy, which is to decide on their own what is a story, how a story should be written. This is the direction is set from above. What stories will go in, what stories will be carried, who should be covered and who should not be covered. So let's not pretend that there's any freedom at all as far as the Herald and Zim papers are concerned. The people in the Ministry of Information, people like George Ramba, people like Nick Mangwana, the Minister of Information, dictate what should be written in government-controlled newspapers.
But how do you know this? I mean, have you worked there?
I haven't worked there, but I know for a fact we've worked with the Bono Chikaodza, who used to work to be editor at the Herald, ended up editing the Standard. He's late now. Davison Maruziva, who used to be Chamisa Tole's deputy at the Herald, ended up working for us. So we know those stories. We get told those stories, that this is what happens. Stories get killed. Instructions as to which story should be written, who should be covering the president, who should be covering the Minister of Information is there. So, it's in terms of where this comes from, it's come from all over the place, and it's first-hand information as to what happens at Zim Papers and what happens at ZBC.
But you also have faced the same allegations that you control content on your publications at AMH, where you are the chairperson.
I've just, before this meeting, before this interview, rather, blessed with you, I met with Kolwane Nyati, the editor of the Standard. I've not seen Kolwane for 2 years, and I hardly talk to the editors. I rarely talk to the editors. I think I speak maybe more often to the editor-in-chief, from time to time, and as it should be. So this I can say without any equivocation, that I do not interfere at all in what goes on in our newspaper.
But it's your money.
It's my money, absolutely. But it's my money. It's not like manufacturing sweets or cakes. It's my money that is performing a huge public duty, a public duty that I respect so much. Remember that I used to be a reporter myself. I used to be a journalist myself. I know what it is like to be a journalist. I know what it feels like to have an editor tell you what story to write and what story not to write. I know what it feels like to have a publisher breathing over your shoulders, telling you what to write and what not to write. But blessed, I have taken a deliberate stance. And that deliberate stance has been informed by, as I was starting on this journey of being a proprietor, I read the book, the biography of the lady who ran the Washington Post. Now I can't remember her name. And the story there is that prior to her running the Washington Post, exposing the Watergate scandal, the husband ran the paper. The husband ran the paper in such a manner that he wanted to endear himself to the political establishment. When she took over, she decided that she wouldn't do that. She would run the paper for the interest of the public and not for the interest of the political establishment. At that particular time, I decided, this was around about 2000, that I was going to be the kind of publisher that was going to be not hands-on in terms of editorial content, hands-on in terms of the business, but not editorial content. Respect the journalists, give the editors free rein, give the journalists free rein, within the parameters of saying we have a pledge to the public, and that pledge is what guides us. And I've went even further, blessed, to say, if the newspapers that are owned by Alpha Media Holdings only published what Trevor wants to be published, they'll be very boring. And therefore, it's important that each publication reflects the perception or the priorities of the editor, and not the proprietor, never the proprietor. And we've taken deliberate, concrete steps as far as that is concerned. We started by having an ombudsman. An ombudsman appointed, we approached a retired judge, and that retired judge would be the arbiter between the public and the journalists. If the public has any complaint, they go to the ombudsman, the public ombudsman. There's not been any company, publishing company in Zimbabwe that has got an ombudsman. We went further and created an editorial advisory board chaired by respected Muchmasunda and leading citizens in that group. For me, it's very important to shield the journalists from the influence of the proprietor or the proprietors. I must not be an overbearing influence on the editorial thrust of any of our publications. And these structures have been put in place to ensure that that happens. But to get back to your point about, but it's your money. So we've got to have broad parameters that say, this is how we're going to operate. And we've got a number of documents that guide us as far as that is concerned. How to get our facts right is a very important document. Our pledge to the public is a very important document, and the guiding principles for each publication. So, at the end of the day, we will not be partisan. We will not support the opposition or support the ruling party or any other players. We will not be biased towards any citizen or against any citizen or against any corporates. Our only bias is towards the facts. Can we find the facts? And this is what our journalists ought to be doing. And indeed, this is what journalists ought to be doing.
But as you're saying this, your titles, Trevor, are seen or looked at as supporting the opposition. We've had an interesting time, Blessed, where at one time the Standard was accused of supporting the establishment. Newsday was accused of supporting the opposition.
And for me, I mean, when I look at that, I say, wow, this is good, because this is exactly what we want. Not that we should be supported, but essentially says that people are taking, they can't tell exactly where we stand. And we shouldn't. We should be seen to be standing with the truth, standing with the facts. But I know you've been accused of being ZANU-PF at times. You've been accused of being either the Yellow Movement of MDC. We live in an environment, blessed, where there's so much toxicity. We are ready to hurl insults at each other, to accuse each other of, you support this and you support that. That's the environment that we operate in, which makes it fundamentally important that journalists rise above that. Even if we're being accused of taking sides, the newspapers taking sides. For us, as the board, as the editorial advisory board, what is important is the story factual? Is the story reflecting what took place on the ground? Is the story sourced? Does it have more than two sources for it to be seen to be credible? So we want to be the trusted source for every time that we write a story. I say to people, blessed, that I want us to get to a point where, and I think we're there now, where people say, I saw it on HSTV, it must be true. I saw it in the Zimbabwe Independent, therefore it must be true. I saw it in the Standard, therefore it must be true. That's what we should be aspiring for.
But all this that you're saying, Trevor, goes against the dictates of what people learn in school, because they basically, when you're doing journalism, there's the economies of the owners, where the owners have, they determine what comes in and what doesn't come out of the press. And you're saying that they should rewrite textbooks.
Absolutely. I don't believe in that. And I think what people don't realize is that Alpha Media Holdings, to a very large extent, we are rewriting the textbooks. I have said a number of times to people that get into media that if you get into media, you make an investment because you think you want to control the narrative, then you are bound to fail. If you get into media and you invest because you want to participate in the multiplicity of voices, in the creation of a marketplace of ideas, you will succeed. For me, that's very important. The moment a proprietor becomes an influence in terms of the content that is in the newspapers, you have a problem. But I think I must own up to the fact, blessed, that what gives me comfort is to go to bed knowing that I did not influence a single of my publications to write a story in a manner in which is not supported by facts. That I did not influence any single journalist to twist a story to suit a certain agenda. My conscience is very clear on that. And here's another thing, blessed, which is very important. I don't want my phone to be ringing with people complaining about stories that appear in our publications or on HSTV and so forth. If that happens, I always say, I am not responsible. I am not my newspapers. If you've got a point, go to the editor. And that's such a genuine response, because I have nothing to do with editorial content. All I do is to provide the protection for journalists to practice their trade. My conscience is absolutely clear.
But one of your former editors has accused you of trying to meddle in the work that journalists were doing, and this goes against what you are saying.
Let's be brutally honest with that. The journalist who's accusing me is Dumisani Muleya. Dumisani is very bitter, okay? That's the truth. Dumisani left because we were about to fire him, okay? Dumisani left because we had warned him a number of times A final warning had been written on Dumisani Mlea for not being on duty when he should be on duty, and that's a fact. All that is there. So Dumisani Mlea is bitter. Let me say this: as far as I'm concerned, let me rephrase and say, step back and say, I have lots of respect for Dumisani as an investigative journalist. I have a lot of respect for Dumisani as perhaps the most respected political editor, political journalist that this country has ever had. But unfortunately, he's decided to take personalize the story of covering me and that kind of stuff. That has blinded him as far as facts is concerned. I know Dumisani to have been somebody who's very professional, but in this instance, I think he's stooped, very low, which is very, very unfortunate.
You have also become a center of study in colleges, in universities, for your role as a Presidential Advisory Council and the chairman of a publication. And the point where you became the PAC member, people view your newspapers to have had a softer stance on the establishment. Let's talk about that.
I can't answer for what the editors do, but the sense I'm getting is that there was an expectation from those in government that the papers would go soft. That never happened. I can tell you that. I've had instances with the highest office in the land dissatisfied that you're in the PAC, but look at what your papers are doing. And my response is, I will never interfere with what the papers do. And I didn't join the PAC to soften the stance of the papers. And equally, there was a perception, I think, on the part of the public that he's now in the PAC. Things are going to think the papers have become soft. That was never the case. And let me highlight this. We had meetings where our team, the editors, would say, people are actually saying, it's interesting that your chairman is in the PAC, but your papers are very critical of the government of the day. Your papers are very critical of Mnangagwa. That was the fact. There was never an instruction from me, whether verbally or written, to say we should go soft on Mnangagwa when I was in the PAC, or go hard on Nelson Chamisa and the opposition when I was in the PAC. Here are the facts. I don't want us to be seen. I don't want us to deliberately decide to be hard on the government and be soft on the opposition. Let's look at the facts. If the government does something right, when they do, let's cover that. If the opposition messes up, let's cover that. If the opposition is abused, let's cover that. If the government does terrible things, let's cover that. We must be even-handed. Unfortunately, blessed, we've had a tendency of journalists being activists, journalists being angry on behalf of the opposition, journalists being angry on behalf of the government of the day. We should not have that. Journalists should be professionals. Journalists should walk the tightrope. They should not take sides. Yes, you are the victims of the economic collapse because of the government. But when you walk into the newsroom, you are a journalist and not a victim of what has happened. Your responsibility is to tell things as they are to the public. I must emphasize this. We cannot have journalists as activists, whether activists on behalf of the government of the day or activists on behalf of the opposition. Journalists must be professional. They should be above the activism that we see in the population.
You bring me to the issue of freedom of expression, and from your point of view, from your understanding, how critical is freedom of expression in the development of Zimbabwe?
Very important, very important. So the role that the media plays is to provide a platform where the citizens communicate with the government. where the government communicates with the citizens, where the citizens and the government have a mirror that is placed in front of them on a daily basis, every minute, to say, this is what we look like, what's and all. Why is that important? It's when we look at ourselves, what's and all in the mirror, that we begin to address those what's and all, and we perfect who we are as a society. When we distort the image that we see to suit what we want to see in the mirror, we've got a huge problem. So the independent media, the private media, let me put it that way, the state media has a role to be useful to the public and the government of the day.
Is it being useful?
Well, I'm afraid to say at the present moment, both sides are to blame for shortchanging the public. There's that element that I spoke about, Blessed, of being activists, of being angry on behalf of the of the opposition, being angry on behalf of the government, when you actually should be saying, yes, I am angry because of the conditions where I come from, but the story I have to do right now is to write the story about Yellow Movement rally. It's about the facts, what took place there, or the ZANU-PF rally in Zimbabwe, or whatever it is. Let's be factual. Let's be biased towards the facts. That's how we inform the public. But if we insert ourselves in the story, we're not informing the public. We're distorting the view that is in front of the people.
But how then, because the nation needs to move forward, how then do we ensure that we are not shortchanging the public and giving it the exact information that it needs to make conscious, clear decisions in a democratic process?
It's a tough question, Blessed, but it's a very important one. So I'm going to be very deliberate in answering this question. And so we have a toxic environment in our society. We're all angry. We're all bitter. We've been abused over the past 42 years, 43 years. And for me, we need to go back to basic as a nation, as a people, as a society. And remember, when I'm talking about society, the journalists are in there. They are a victim of this toxicity. We need to get back to defining who are we, who do we want to be. And for me, for us to engage with that question would require leadership and the reformation of ourselves as individuals. Who do I want to be as Trevor Ncube? What do I aspire towards as an individual? How do I cleanse myself as an individual from this toxicity into the new person that's going to contribute to a new society? How do we go back to the basics for each journalist to say, we need to cleanse you of this toxicity, okay? Until each and every one of us confronts themselves every morning and look yourself in the mirror and say, wow, 42 years of ZANU-PF rule has done this to me. How do I change myself? Let me break it down to you this way, Blessed. Look at the way we drive on the roads. That's who we've become. Look at how we abuse each other. That's who we become. Look at social media and the toxicity, the insults and everything else. That's who we've become. Is that who we want to be? No. Do we have any leadership in ZANU-PF and the Yellow Movement that speaks to those issues? No, we don't have. So it's fundamentally important that we begin to demand from ourselves the leadership that we would want to see leading us into a new future. We are messed up as a society. We cannot deny that. Look at the way we drive. Look at the way we abuse each other. Look at the way we throw rubbish all over the place. Declaring national days to clean the streets is not going to clean the mind and bring about a new culture of We want clean streets. Clean streets are not a result of monthly cleanup operations. Clean streets are a result of daily reflection. I'm not going to throw a paper outside. As Trevor Ncube, not as demanded by the president of the country. It starts with you. It doesn't start with the president.
Yeah. But when you speak about cleansing, some people have then accused you, as many would see you as an opinion maker, having a hatred, as they have put it, against Nelson Chamisa of the Triple C Yellow Movement in recent opinions that you have done. Do you think that you, as an individual and as a leader of alternative press, accept free speech personally?
Absolutely, absolutely. I embrace being criticized. In fact, I tweeted the other day that you must welcome, you must embrace those that criticize you, because those are the people that most likelihood have your best interest. The people that come to you and praise you, you must be very wary of those people. I think it's, as far as I'm concerned, there is not a single word I have written about Nelson Chamisa which is hate. There is not a single word I've written about Robert Mugabe which is hate, or about Emmerson Mnangagwa which is hate. I speak truth in love. I speak truth in love. You know, I pray every day, blessed, for Nelson Chamisa and for Emmerson Mnangagwa. I pray for them every day. I pray that God blesses them with wisdom, that they care about the common person in this country. Because they don't. Both of them don't. Both of them are focused on what politics is going to deliver to them. So what people deliberately construe as hate is me criticizing Nelson Chamisa, me criticizing Emmerson Mnangagwa. That is not hate. That is love. I mean, there's nothing I've written that I'm ashamed of. There's nothing I've written that I wouldn't write again. I am essentially saying, my brother Nelson Chamisa, be careful of these things. Let me just finish that thought, Blessed. Nelson Chamisa is a man who's captured the moment. He's very popular. But he needs to surround himself with men and women that are going to support him towards the vision that is going to benefit this country. My cry has been that I don't see the leadership. For instance, I've not seen the Constitution. How can one man go out and launch a movement that people then fully embrace and say, what are you embracing? Where is this thing going to? So I'm speaking truth in love. I love Nelson Chamisa as a human being. I love Emmerson Mnangagwa as a human being. Because I love them, I will never tire from telling them the truth. The truth hurts, but the truth shall set you free.
But you had recently in South Africa, when you were speaking, you said you were prepared to give Emmerson Mnangagwa a chance. Even if you had seen 40 years of history about him, you actually gave him a chance. Yeah. But you don't want to do the same with Nelson. This is the question that has been thrown to you on social media. Now, can you speak to it?
I've given Nelson Chamisa a chance. And so as far as I'm concerned, Nelson Chamisa has a big stake in the future of this country. What I am saying is, Nelson Chamisa, look at what's happened in the urban councils and the city councils that you control. Look at the disaster that the urban councils have become, local government. You control quite a big chunk of that. Look at how the MDC that you inherited from Morgan Tsvangirai, rather, has just disintegrated. That's a sign of leadership. Things falling apart as you're holding them. the portals that we're seeing and everything else. I know people will say ZANU-PF has done that, but I have not seen the opposition stand up and articulate what they want to do with that. Let me point out another thing. Blessed to you. You know there's a reporter or somebody that used to help the New York Times who's been in prison. Is he still in prison?
No, he's out.
He's out. But have you ever heard the opposition speak about the importance of press freedom? You have the opposition saying, if the Herald does this, they shouldn't come and attend and cover our meetings. Is that not worrying? Is that not worrying? I am worried about conduct that is coming from the opposition that says they have been affected by the toxicity that is in the society. But much more importantly, blessed, Zimbabwe is not going to be different if people decide, oh, let's not criticize them, because criticizing them is weakening them. Point number one. Point number two, if you're going to replace ZANU-PF, you better be better than ZANU-PF. That's my thing.
Then how do the media then play an effective role to make sure that if we are replacing ZANU-PF or ZANU-PF itself is reforming, it becomes better for a better Zimbabwe? Look, we are 42 years independence, but if you look at our infrastructure, it has gone back to pre-1980.
You know, this is where I say to myself, in answering your question, what does it take to rebuild this nation? Is an election going to be what we require to rebuild this nation? I'm having my doubts, blessed. I'm having my doubts.
But Trevor, you have been part of political outfits. That means you would have believed in a political solution to this country.
Yes, at some point. But, you know, this is the thing about us, blessed, that we believe that changing your mind about things is a weakness. No, it's a strength. A fool does not change their mind because it means they didn't learn anything from yesterday. It's important that we learn lessons as we go on and we change our minds on issues depending on whether facts have changed. I am beginning to doubt if elections are going to sort out our problems because of this, blessed. There's so many things we've messed up, particularly a culture of intolerance. Our institutions have been messed up. Parliament, the police, the defense force, and that kind of stuff, personalized. What will it take to rebuild those things? You know, if I had my way, we would, as a people, say, let's press pause. Let's find each other. Let's create an opportunity where ZANU-PF, the Yellow Movement, and everybody else, we step back and say, let's have an administration that is run by technocrats. That's going to lay the ground for the way we commence going forward. Because the people in the Yellow Movement are human beings. If they get into power and there's a faulty constitution, most likely they will run with it as it is because it benefits them. We have seen that. Okay, so we are in a point of inflection, blessed. And this is my prayer when I pray in the morning for Nelson Chamisa, who I love dearly, and from Nangago, who I love dearly, is to say, can you be seized by what's important for the people? The woman who's battling because they can't get medication, they can't go to hospital. The child who can't go to school because the parents can't afford to send them to school. The millions of people that don't have jobs. How do we resolve that? Is resolving that, rather, is your ambition to power much more important than the problems that people face on a daily basis? What sacrifice can be paid by all in leadership to help us but begin to walk towards a new future. Unfortunately, what I'm seeing around, I'll describe it this way, is the very clear ambition to hold on to power by those in ZANU-PF because of the economic interests that they have and the benefits that come from that, and the desire from the opposition to get into power, not because they have a different agenda than ZANU-PF, but because they simply want to be there. I am not seeing a difference in approach, in terms of culture, in terms of values, in terms of principle, in terms of love for each other, and accommodation and compromise for us to begin a new journey as a people.
Now, your views, those views, Trevor, and you shared them publicly, do you think they do not have any spin-offs to your journalists, to people that work around you, and they think, oh, that's the chairman, this is what he's saying, probably this is the direction that I should go?
No, I don't think so. I have lots of respect for the men and women that we work with, like you, and others, that these are men and women who have independent minds. They don't need to take a cue from me. They are people who make their minds independently from me. In as much as what the journalists at Alpha Media Holdings write, I read it, it affects me, it influences me. Sometimes it doesn't. I disagree with them. That's what we are. We are proud, I think, at Alpha Media Holdings for the fact that each one of us can hold views that are and hold those views passionately and disagree passionately, and continue to be able to practice as journalists at the end of the day. But as a writer and as somebody who influences opinion, would I like to influence people? Yes, I indeed. I mean, that's why I write. But I want the strength of my arguments to persuade people, not me knocking or calling people and say, I agree with me. I know my views are never the popular views at any given time, and that's what I'm proud about. I'm a leader. I'm a leader, and I don't have to have an office to be a leader. And I need to think differently and think in a fresh manner. When I write, I've sat down and decided this is what I write because it's different. It's fresh. I will upset a lot of people. Do I care? No, I don't care. Is it genuine? Is it authentic coming from me? Absolutely. That's what matters at the end of the day.
Now let me take you to the other phase. You said you don't agree that elections will solve the problems in Zimbabwe, but we are going into an election in 2023. What role is the media supposed to play, and is it ready to play that role?
I think the role of the media is to tell the story of our living the way it is, without embellishing the truth, without being affected by our political biases. Yes, we are political beings, and we will have biases. But my plea is, when you write a story as a journalist, your biases should not be in there. Let me give you a story. Let me give you an example. I'm an Arsenal supporter. When you're writing a story as an Arsenal supporter, if the score is 2-1, it's 2-1. You can't change it around. You can't then, embellish the way the football match was played, because we were there, we watched the match. Report the match the way you saw it, without bias. That's what political reporters ought to be doing. That's what commentators ought to be doing. Informed by facts, not trying to embellish things based on the biases that they take on issues. So let's inform the people as we go to the election. And what are these issues that the people are going to be deciding on? Is their living conditions, the state of their roads, the state of health, education, and that kind of stuff, and saying these are the issues that we face. These are the leaders that say want to resolve those issues. Do they have the capacity? Do they have the potential? But at the end of the day, help the people make up their minds based on facts. We know the consequences of distorting facts to suit certain agendas. We've seen what happened with Brexit. We've seen what happened with the election of Trump. We've seen what happened right now, the coverage of Ukraine, the distortions that are coming out there. We have a responsibility to the public to be factual at all times.
The economy is a major factor, Trevor, especially for media to remain afloat and to play an important role in the elections. Let us talk about that. Are we ready for it as a media industry to be able to cover the election blow by blow?
We don't operate in a vacuum. We are a victim of the economic circumstances that we face. Blessed, we've been in business for 25 years. We've seen the good times and the bad times. We've survived for the past 26 years. It's not always been so smooth sailing. To your question, are we ready right now? No, we are not ready. But the job must be done with the mega resources that we have, which are a product of the economic environment that we're operating in. As I sit with you right now, yesterday the rate was maybe 280 Zimbabwean, or whatever you want to call it, RTGS to $1. By the time you and I finish this interview, or by the time you run this interview, I suspect we're going to be around about 350 to 400 to the $. How does media operate in that environment? How do we operate in that environment? How do we manage to sell copies, sell our e-paper, be able to pay decent salaries within this kind of environment? We are like fish in a glass bowl because we make lots of noise. So people are going to be watching and saying, are they complaining that they're not being paid well and that kind of stuff? But this is a situation all across the country. People are not being paid on time. People are not being paid what they think they should be paid because the economy is not in a good place. Media does not operate in a vacuum. Media depends on advertising. Is there advertising revenues out there to support the media? Do people have money in their back pockets at the end of the day to be able to buy newspapers? We've seen what's happened with the economy, the economics of publishing in this country. We are hurting. Every media house is hurting. Journalists are hurting. The whole country is hurting. That's where we are. But your question, are we ready? No, we are not ready. But does that mean that the job doesn't have to be done? The job has to be done. So we're going to do the job to the best of our ability with the means.
In your response, you raised a few issues that have found space on social media, and I think you have an opportunity to respond to them, that your journalists, your workers are poorly paid and they're constantly complaining. Now, given that, are they the best people to speak truthfully without being corrupted?
Well, I think are they poorly paid? We're all poorly paid. I'm poorly paid myself. I would. There's a lot of things that I wish I had, which I don't have. We're all poorly paid. I think it applies all across the country. Anybody that's doing well in this country is not doing so out of what they earn from 9 to 5. It's bound to be other things that they're doing. And I have lots of sympathies for the men and women that work at Alpha Media World. We're doing amazing work. It's a tough economic environment. It's very, very tough. Can they, under the circumstances, be expected to do what is right? Absolutely. The fact that things are tough does not mean that you compromise on your principles. When things are tough, that's when your principles and your values become important. That's why we've had, some of the longest serving people, remain with us for 20 years, for 15 years, for 30. It's because of the environment that we've allowed. I'm very proud of the environment that we've created for where journalists practice their trade, knowing that nobody's going to interfere. But there's a price to pay for that, particularly in the economy that we are working in at the present moment. Things are tough, but because things are tough, we don't have to sell our souls to the nearest bidder. When things are tough, we hold on to our values, we hold on to our principles. That's why, blessed, I walked away out after the PAC. Nobody can buy me. Absolutely. Nobody can afford me. Nobody can buy my principles and my values. When I feel my values have been compromised, I walk away. And the people that we work with are those kind of people.
But Trevor, there's the issue of advertising. As you speak, we're talking the finance of the media. Do you think that there's a point where government is using advertisement to entice media to report in the line that it wants?
I don't think. I've worked in different markets. You know, I used to own the Mail and Guardian. When I took over the Mail and Guardian in South Africa, there was a time when I drove to Pretoria almost every week to persuade the government to lift the whispers not to advertise in the Mail and Guardian, until I succeeded in doing that. We don't have that in Zimbabwe. There isn't a deliberate instruction that you should not advertise in private media. ZANU-PF advertises in the Zimbabwe in our titles. The government advertises, but not to the same extent. The place where I think there's influence is self-censorship as far as the number of companies are concerned, where they think that if they are perceived, if they are seen by the government of the day advertising in the private media, they will lose the contracts that they have with the government. There's a lot of that going on. But the government itself supports us. We have adverts coming from the Office of the President, from the Minister of Information, from ZANU-PF and that kind of stuff. But our private sector is a timid private sector. It's a private sector that wants to project an image that they will not do anything that the government of the day is not happy about, which is different from what has obtained in a number of countries. So in all fairness, we haven't seen any instruction that says do not advertise. Would we be happier getting more advertising from the government? Absolutely. Would love to get the same advertising that we see from the government in government newspapers.
How is this self-censorship from private proprietors affected free speech in Zimbabwe?
In a big way, because the private sector talk about the importance of democracy and free speech, but they don't pay for democracy and free speech. Democracy and free speech are expensive. The private sector is not prepared to do that. I've said to my friends in the private sector who for a long time said, but are you not afraid of speaking out the truth? And I said, no, I'm not afraid. But I'm sure when they come visiting you, you'll come running to us to protect you. And that's been the case a number of times. And they come to me and say, wow, we should have supported the private media. So it's important for the private sector to realize that democracy and freedom of expression are not only enjoyed by journalists and the media. Democracy and freedom of expression are values and principles that must be paid for by all of us and enjoyed by all of us.
Now, as we close, Trevor, you've got in conversation with Trevor. Now, why did you have that vehicle? What use do you think it is to?
Wow, I've done amazing things in my life that have given me so much joy. In conversation with Trevor is giving me so much joy. I am giving back to a society that made me who I am. The reason why I started in conversation is almost 2 or 3-fold. After spending 18 years in South Africa and coming back, I discovered that we had 2 generations that were not benefiting from each other. We had the older generation that had done amazing things under difficult times. That was not sharing their experiences with the younger generation. And I said, how do we make the older generation share with the younger generation? We have a dynamic young group of people doing amazing things who want to benefit from these people. How do you bridge the gap? Point number one. Point number two, how do I help cleanse this toxicity in this environment? How do I help us as Zimbabweans engage in a manner that's respectful, that looks at issues, that looks at the beauty amongst us, that looks at the lovely people that we are in? How do we change our trajectory by telling our authentic stories? Blessed, I've never been so excited about something that I'm doing like I am right now. The emails I'm getting from people that I've been on in conversation, whether in business operations, startups or whatever, absolutely amazing. They give me so much joy. The feedback I'm getting from young people who are saying, you are mentoring us every Monday when we sit in front of our televisions, wherever we are. Blessed, we're now sitting on 4.3 million viewers all across the world, 46% in Zimbabwe, 54% all over the world, in Africa and everywhere else in the world. And all of them look forward to us sharing our stories. There's beauty and value in us sharing our stories. Our stories have lessons of failure, lessons of success. And we learn from other people's failures, we learn from other people's successes. And that's what In Conversation is all about. Our stories can be very inspirational if shared in an authentic kind of way. And that is what In Conversation has become. It's performed beyond my wildest expectations.
Amazing. Now, we have been in conversation with Trevor, but Trevor is on the other side this evening. But Trevor, almost your final words. Media industry has changed. There has been disruptions, especially coming with COVID-19. But what role do you see the media playing in genuine democracies as we go, especially the democracy that some would say is non-existent in Zimbabwe? What is the real role of the media?
I think the real role of the media, so media has changed, but what has not changed is journalism. What has not changed is the importance of quality content. I think I have no doubt in my mind that we will begin to see a much more stronger walk back from the public towards quality sources, quality broadcasters, quality publications, quality sources of content. I think by that I'm saying, Blessed, that the responsibility of journalists, current and future journalists, is going to be the challenge every day. How do we produce quality content? Because the fake stuff is all over the place. The toxicity is all over the place. How do we produce quality content, verified quality content, reliable quality content? That's going to be the thing. Point number one. Point number two, analysis. How do we help people, the public, understand the complexity of the environment that we're living in? Finance, business, the environment, and all those kind of things. How do we break those things down in a manner that the public do understand? And how do we become reliable conveyors of that information? There's space for good journalism going forward. Media has changed. The way in which we deliver media has changed, but content remains what it's always been. It's got to be accurate. It's got to be factual. It's got to be reliable. That is what the public expects from us.
No, thank you very much, Trevor. 42 years of Zimbabwean independence. We are here as Zimbabwe, and we're also commemorating our 42nd year as a free Zimbabwe. We're commemorating it on the Press Freedom Day. Now, you might have a message, Trevor, and I always do this with my guests. You might have a message, not necessarily related to the questions that we've given you, but a message that you would want to take this opportunity to look into Zimbabwe to look at the people in Zimbabwe and share your message from your heart?
I thank you, Blessed, for that. This is my message. That let's all of us realize that we are each of us leaders in our small spaces. That the Zimbabwe that we want can only be delivered by I as Trevor Ncube and you as an individual deciding that you're going to change your values, your perceptions, the way we look at the world. And also to remind you that we see the world as we are, not as it is. And it's important that we get up every morning and we say to ourselves, what do we want to project to the world? What is it that we want to give to the world? And this, every morning I get up after meditating and I decide that I'm going to give love to the world. I'm going to give truth to the world. I love this country. I'm tormented by where we are as a nation. I am disappointed by where we are as a nation, but I have hope that our best days are yet to come. And one final thing, contrary to what people say, I actually love Nelson Chamisa, and I wish him all the very best. I love Emmerson Mnangagwa, and I wish him all the very best. But above all, that may they prioritize what is important for Zimbabwe and not for them as individuals. That requires a huge sacrifice and love and commitment to a better Zimbabwe and a better nation. Thank you, Blessed, for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Trevor. Now, this is the Free Talk with me, your host, as usual, Dara Blessed Mhlanga. Now, when our leaders, politicians, business succeed, it's not their success, it's ours. We share it all. After all, we live in the countries that are led by those political leaders. So their success is the success of the nation. It is the success of you and me. It is incumbent on us as citizens to keep those in leadership in account. It is incumbent on us as the citizens of Zimbabwe to be able to speak the truth so that those in power know where they are getting it wrong and they get it right. We are not patriotic because we are silent. We are patriotic because we speak. We are not better Zimbabweans because we allow evil to prevail. We are better Zimbabweans because we stop it from happening. This is the crux of freedom of expression. This is the crux whereupon media is built. So as we celebrate or commemorate World Press Freedom Day, I encourage you, I beseech all of you to ensure that we give each other an ear, we listen to each other, we talk to each other and not through each other. This is what the alternative is about. This is why we are HSTV. This is why we are Freedom Frederick Newman Foundation. Until next time, thank you for joining us here on the Free Talk with me, Dara Blessed Mhlanga, in conversation with Trevor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.